These are the top 15 classic muscle cars of our past. The 1971 Plymouth Hemi Barracuda. The Plymouth Hemi Cuda personifies the classic muscle car. Not only does it look the part with its shaker hood, Hemi decals, and menacing front facade, but it also has a 426 cubic inch Hemi big block engine, producing 425 horsepower to back up its muscular physique. Sadly, the car also represents one of the last true high-performance muscle cars of its era. Stricter government regulations started coming through the pipe in the early 1970s, mandating that engines become less thirsty and more fuel efficient. Rather than continue to update the Cuda to comply with regulations, Plymouth decided to let it go out in a blaze of glory and not tarnish its stellar reputation. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. With such legendary nameplates like the Mustang, Galaxy, and Falcon, it is easy to see why the Ford Fairlane can get lost in the mix. With the larger Ford Galaxy gaining popularity over the third-generation Fairlane's demeanor in the 1960s, the Fairlane's glory was reduced, and its role became to cater to a more average audience. Ford changed that by producing the Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt in 1964. Their goal was to make a from-the-factory drag racing car, and they chose the Fairlane as the bearer of that responsibility. They took the 7.0-liter V8 engine from the larger Galaxy NASCAR vehicles of the time, stripped out the weight-consuming parts on the regular Fairlane, and tweaked its gearing. The result was a quarter-mile drag strip time of under 12 seconds, an estimated 0 to 60 miles per hour time of under 5 seconds, and a vehicle that produced 425 horsepower. Despite being purpose-built for drag racing, technically the Fairlane Thunderbolt was also street legal. The 1968 Shelby Cobra 427. Carroll Shelby is known for teaming up with Ford to make some of its vehicles a little more special. When he teamed up with Ford to create a Chevrolet Corvette competitor in the 1960s, he set his eyes on the British manufacturer AC Cars. They had a two-seat convertible sports car that would be perfect in which to stuff an American V8 engine. These first vehicles are not the ones we remember the most, though. In 1965, Shelby started upping the ante, fitting a 7.0-liter Ford V8 engine and an updated chassis to the tiny Roadster. The engine was good for producing 425 horsepower. Add the classic white racing stripes on the blue body, and you have one of the lightest and greatest muscle cars of all time. With a top speed of 164 miles per hour, it was also faster than many of the heavier and bulkier muscle cars at the time. The 1968 Chevrolet Corvette L88. The Chevrolet Corvette L88 is much like Bigfoot. When it first went on sale in 1967, it was hidden amongst the other L71 Corvettes at the time, appearing to be offered with most of the same specs, but at about 2 times the price. The reason for that was actually because Chevrolet did not really want the public to get its hands on this beast of a sports car. To comply with SCCA and FIA GT event regulations, the L88 had to be offered as a factory option at the time. As a purpose-built race car, the L88 came with upgrades like Can-Am spec cylinder heads, solid lifters, an upgraded crankshaft, an upgraded suspension, and an 850 CFM dual-feed Holley carburetor. It even came with a warning that race fuel was recommended to be used. The 1965 Ford Shelby Mustang GT350. Carroll Shelby is perhaps best known for getting his hands on the Ford Mustang GT and transforming several iterations of it from a road-going pony car into a more serious racetrack monster. The 1965 Shelby GT350 started it all. He took the then recently released Mustang and made it into a fire-breathing muscle car. The stock 271 horsepower V8 engine received a high-rise intake manifold, a Holley 4-barrel carburetor, a beefier radiator, and upgraded exhaust headers to increase its output to 306 horsepower. A top speed of 138 miles per hour, a 0 to 60 time of 6.6 seconds, and a 4-speed manual transmission went with it. A total of 562 Shelby GT350s were sold in 1965, all of which feature Wimbledon white exterior paint and a black interior. The 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z/28. Upon seeing the runaway success of the Ford Mustang, the Chevrolet Camaro was conceived to compete against it. It offered many of the same engine options as the Mustang, including a base 6-cylinder, but the most desirable one came on the Z/28 Camaro. At 4.9 liters. The small block Chevy engine was designed to meet the Trans Am 5-liter class regulations. It came with a 4-speed manual transmission, front disc brakes, and upgraded suspension. In total 602 Chevy Camaro Z/28s were sold in 1967, making them the most desirable for the model year. The 1971 AMC Hornet SC/360 does not likely come to mind when you think of muscle cars. It does not even look like a traditional American muscle car with flared fenders, big haunches, and a menacing face. This car is a hidden gem, though. And it had the huge task and honor of competing directly with other powerful offerings coming out of Detroit. Compared to other muscle cars of the time, the Hornet was tiny, with a curb weight of just over 3,050 pounds and a wheelbase of 108 inches. Its power output was 2. AMC took the V8 engine from its Javelin AMX and put it into the Hornet. It only made 245 horsepower, but if you chose the Go package, that figure was boosted to 285 horsepower. It could still hit 60 miles per hour in about 6.6 seconds and get through the quarter mile in just over 15 seconds. The 1964 Pontiac GTO. Many will argue about who made the first true muscle car and what it was, but there is a significant amount of people who consider the 1964 Pontiac GTO to be it. The GTO was actually initially an option package for the Pontiac Lemons, allowing it to skirt General Motors' ban on auto racing and the subsequent limit on engine size to 5.4 liters. The package replaced the standard engine with a 6.4-liter V8 that was rated at 325 horsepower. You could choose between a hardtop coupe, two-door sedan, or convertible body style and add options like a 4-speed manual transmission, a more powerful 348 horsepower setup with an upgraded carburetor, and a limited slip differential. As sales began to increase, the GTO became a standalone model. The 1971 Dodge Dart Demon 340. Many will doubtless know the Dodge Demon as the modern-day purpose-built monster that Dodge built to go drag racing. That is true, but the Demon name is far from modern. The Dodge Dart utilized it for a time, but it is much less famous than other Mopar models like the Plymouth Roadrunner, Plymouth Barracuda, Dodge Charger Daytona, and Dodge Challenger R/T. The high-performance Dart Demon 340 had a 340 cubic inch V8 that produced 275 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque. That may not sound like much, but like the AMC Hornet, the Dart was a smaller vehicle that weighed only about 3,160 pounds. In addition to its engine upgrades, it came with dual exhaust, a sure grip differential, and performance suspension. You could get one with a rear spoiler and a blackhead scoop to complement the cartoon Demon found on the side of the car. The 1964 Oldsmobile 442. Right on the heels of Pontiac's GTO package, Oldsmobile played a game of copycat with their corporate cousin and decided to offer the 442 package for their Cutlass and F85 models. In addition to a 4-barrel carburetor, a 4-speed manual transmission, and dual exhaust from which the package gets its name, it also included the police apprehender package upgrades. This boosted total output to 310 horsepower and threw in an upgraded suspension for good measure. Compared to other package upgrades like the GTO, the 442 package was fairly tame. But the upgrades that did come with it made the Oldsmobile models on which it was equipped drive and handle much better than most competitors. The 1969 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. The Pontiac Firebird came out in 1967 as a pony car meant to compete against the Ford Mustang and its own corporate cousin, the Chevy Camaro. The Firebird name lasted all the way through the early 2000s, with several iconic models making their appearances throughout history. The most famous and highly sought-after model, though, is the 1969 Trans Am. Only 689 two-door coupe models and 8 convertibles were produced. They are easily recognized by their cameo ivory paint with Tyrol blue stripes and rear-end panels. Each model benefited from a 400 cubic inch Ram Air 3 V8 engine, good for 335 horsepower. A Ram Air 4 variant of the engine was equipped on only 55 models though, upping the power to 345 and increasing their value and desirability. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS454. If you want to experience what is potentially the best representation of an American muscle car ever made, look no further than the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS454. It came with a huge 7.5-liter Chevy Big Block V8 with 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. You could get one with a Muncie 4-speed manual transmission or a 3-speed automatic. Regardless, it has the capability to dash to 60 miles per hour in just over 5 seconds, complete the quarter mile in under 14 seconds, and continue on to a top speed of over 130 miles per hour. At the time of its release, it was known as the king of muscle cars. The 1970 Mercury Cyclone spoiler 429 Super Cobra Jet. Mercury is best known for making the Cougar Eliminator, another often overlooked muscle car. The Cyclone does not have quite the reputation of the Cougar, but it looks every bit as bad as its sibling. It has enough power to liquidate its rear wheels, and it is one of the best muscle cars about which many non-enthusiasts have never heard. The most powerful, most desirable model is the Cyclone spoiler 429 Super Cobra Jet. It comes with a 7.0-liter Cobra Jet V8 that produces 375 horsepower, 450 pound-feet of torque, and a 0 to 60 time of around 6 seconds. You could even get it with a drag pack that equipped it just a little better to lightly shave your quarter-mile time. The 1977 Pontiac Can-Am. Not many would agree with the statement that the majority of mid to late 1970s American cars were great. One of which was the 1977 Pontiac Can-Am. Pontiac decided to start with the declining Lemons model, adding the Trans Am's 6.6-liter engine, a turbo 400 transmission, a ducktail spoiler, and a shaker hood to it to try and breathe life back into the struggling company. Unfortunately, it was never a success, in part, because of a production hiccup that limited numbers to 1,377 and the production year to 1977 only. The Can-Am produced 200 horsepower. That is barely anything by today's standards, but it was only 10 less than the Chevrolet Corvette had at the time. The 1970 Plymouth Hemi Roadrunner. Chrysler has made some pretty impressive muscle cars over the years, but none has been more impressive while simultaneously flying so far under the radar as the Roadrunner. Most will be familiar with the Superbird, which is based on the Roadrunner, but the Hemi Roadrunner was one of the fastest muscle cars of its day while being cheaper than many larger ones. 1970 models were available with a variety of powerful engines, but the best by far was Chrysler's 7.0-liter Hemi V8. It produced a reported 425 horsepower. The car's relative lightness, compared to larger competitors, made it both nimbler and scarier to drive for the faint of heart. Without the added aerodynamics on Roadrunner Superbird to make it the NASCAR racer it was designed to be, the Hemi Roadrunner looked menacing enough. We hope you enjoyed this look at the top 15 classic muscle cars of our recent history.
If you would, please like, comment, and if you are not already, subscribe to Life with Mountain Folk. They are good people. Thank you for watching.